of kale is masquerading tonight as, I think that's the dollar signs, or, no? No?
You gotta move Jean over. Jean is a participant, you might want to move her over. Dr. Bacon? That's what I was trying to tell you.
I do, but I have it on mute and speakers off.
Same thing, speakers off and I have it on mute.
They won't even let me in.
I didn't try to get in unless
Everything's off here.
Sorry. Thought we were good here.
So is the camera that's on me over here?
No, the camera's on you.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
I'm at a loss on that one. We have no computers that are actually running sound like that.
So just to make sure it's my turn, I'll just share screen.
Yeah. Sorry, Amy.
Hey, Glenn.
Hello.
I think we're gonna do that. Speakers down.
Okay.
Let's try that.
Of course, yeah. Yes. Total eligible expenses, yes.
going through like mass aggravation.
I think so. I would ask
In the
Martha
beginning,
that
I
rather than me.
got so used to it, and
Total eligible expenses, I believe that's everything that we spent on those 26 days. Yeah.
like it's like the first
Yeah.
day.
Sometimes I have fun inside my house. I totally
Rubbing my
forget.
nose, and I want to scream, and
On the weekends, like when I'm at Okemo, I wear it for like 10 hours straight. And then I drive home and I get home and I like go to have dinner. And I'm like, like I don't even touch it.
I've been wearing it like I worked a couple weekends, and I had to wear it all day, and I was like, yeah, it's fine, but maybe because you're just not thinking about stuff and busy, but like.
Can the people at home hear me? Thumbs up if you can. All right, awesome. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is, my notes. Today is February 9th. This is the Swampscott School Committee regular session. I am going to call this meeting to order, and anybody who can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent, before we go into your report, I just want to acknowledge that we have Al here in the audience, who was here with us last week. I specifically want to acknowledge the questions that he raised last week. And I know we talked a little bit about Dr. Bacon's report on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging report. And based on all that was happening, the superintendent and I decided to hold that discussion next week so that we really had an opportunity to focus on it and have it not be a part of tonight's conversation, which really has to focus so much on our budget. But I did want to acknowledge the fact that that Al is here, especially because it's not really often that we have students showing up, A, asking questions, and then B, showing up for follow-up. So I really appreciate that. So thanks for keeping us on our toes. And then Superintendent, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. I'd like to start my superintendent's report with reminding the committee that in terms of a mask mandate, our school district has always followed DESE guidance, which the mask mandate from DESE is through February 28th. I do want to let the public know and the committee know that we will be wearing masks through next week and going into February vacation. But at next Wednesday's school committee meeting, I'll be making a recommendation based on the data, based on conversations with our health department, the school nurses, our lead nurse, our occupational health nurse, and our school physician. So I will circle back with the committee at next week's meeting, because as you and I have discussed, tonight is jam-packed with budget being the focus. So on February 16th, I will report out on that. But as of this evening, masks will be worn through next week and into February vacation.
Anybody have any questions or any?
So when you come back to the committee, can you have vaccination rates for the different levels of kids and staff?
Okay, I actually have the student vaccination rates tonight, not knowing that the commissioner was going to make that. Aren't you happy, Mrs. Wright? You caught me well. So the week of February 7th is the latest results we have. At Swampscott High School, we have 84.3% of students vaccinated. At middle school, we have 53%. At the Hadley School, we have 65%. At Clark School, we have 45%. And at Stanley School, we have 59%. I can get you the staff rates and percentages, but keep in mind, way back, the majority of our staff had been fully vaccinated, and now we were collecting data on the boosters. So staff would be considered fully vaccinated with 2 shots or the 1 Johnson & Johnson, but I will bring those rates back to you at next week's committee meeting. But in preparation for tonight, and as I said, not knowing what, we were notified late last night that the commissioner would be speaking and the governor would be speaking today. I pulled these rates together yesterday or Monday even, so.
And can you repeat, what was the middle school?
Middle school is 53%.
Oh.
And we, you know, it's no secret that we have known that our high school has met that 80% threshold to apply for a waiver. But if you recall it a few meetings back, I was very concerned about the December break and people going on vacation and the holiday gatherings. And so I'll say this once again, that as a district, we've maintained through this pandemic by being sometimes overly cautious and putting in more constraints than necessary. But we will have some discussions and bring a recommendation to you next week.
Thank you.
And do we have to do anything? I believe we wrote our policy such that if DESE changes it and it changes, we don't have to.
No, we gave the superintendent authority
Right.
to
Right, so we don't have to
change that.
update anything ourselves. Okay.
No, that's the chatter that's going around right now. There are some districts that have a policy, school committee needs to vote. Our MOU with the teachers union expired at the end of the school year. We're still working on this year's, and it hasn't been signed yet. So I think it would just be based on a recommendation and no formal vote is necessary.
My only request would be that a quick note would be to go out to the community to say that this will be addressed next week. I know it's a question that's starting to come in.
Sure enough. I will do that. Well, I will not be doing it tomorrow because in case the committee doesn't know, I will be part of the interview panel for the next police chief all day tomorrow. So I won't be in my office. I will be participating, and I'm honored that they've asked me to participate. So I will get that out. Next item on my agenda, I'm very excited. School committee has been rejuvenated by the student visits and the student recognitions that have occurred in the last few weeks. And given we are in winter, and given Maggie's plea last week, we thought it would be great to bring someone forward who has a large voice in forecasting and weather and accuracy, and probably has more followers than the Swampscott Public Schools on Twitter.
For sure.
Okay. So tonight we have invited Mr. Michael Farragamo here tonight. His passion for weather and storms and storm chasing, and his acknowledgement, he's been acknowledged on the local news for his predictions and tallies. And so we thought it would be great to recognize him and bring him forward and let him talk about his passion, interests, and his future. Welcome, Michael.
Awesome, thank you. All right, for those who don't know me, my name is Michael Farragamo. I'm a senior here at Swampscott High School. And I just made a little slideshow just to introduce myself and just what I'm about, really, just about me. I'll put this in slideshow form.
Make sure you share the screen for the Zoom.
Yep. All right. All right. So I titled this My Life of Learning because that's really what my life has been, really, is just learning. Learning's everything, and you'll see very shortly. But just a quick about me. I've lived in Swampscott my whole life. As I said, I'm a senior. I love the New England region. It's just awesome. You know, New Hampshire, Maine. You can go from the ocean to the mountains in, less than an hour, 2 hours. And it's really just an incredible region. And this incredible region kind of led me to my interest in weather. Going back to 2011, I'll get to in that second. But I've been into weather since I was about 7 years old. And I recently, the last few years, I've used this passion to actually help people, which is amazing. It's awesome that you can go into a career, into something you're passionate about, and it's awesome, and you help people too. So like many were saying, yes, I want to be on TV, future meteorologist, on the news, preferably broadcast. The thing with meteorology is there's so much you could do with it. You could go into the Army, you could go into, National Grid, they have their own meteorologists, the airlines. So there's a lot you could do with it, but my comfortableness is probably in the news. And then as others mentioned, I am a storm chaser, you could say. I will go actively seeking storms for thrill and safety, which I will also get to in a little bit. So my roots of weather, it all started back with the Springfield tornado. I have the Springfield tornado's radar loop up on the right side of your screen there. I remember as a 7-year-old just looking at the colors on screen, getting the good old-fashioned weather alert on a warm June summer day. And then kind of from there it took off a little bit. A month later, we had the 2011 heat wave. It got to 103 degrees in Boston, set the all-time record, tied it actually just about a century earlier with 1911. So I remember that day very well. And then a little later in August 2011, we had Hurricane Irene, which came up the eastern seaboard. And that one I also remember very vividly. And then most people will remember Hurricane Sandy, which I remember my little third grade self going around telling my teachers and stuff, a hurricane's coming. It was amazing. They know me for that now. And yeah, it was really awesome. So that was in October 2012. And then from there, it's just kind of developed into what it is now. So in that time frame from about 2011 to now, as I said, New England has some of the most interesting weather in the world, really. And the blizzard of 2013 led me to research some of these past events. So these past events, we're talking 1938 hurricane, Hurricane Carol, 1954, the blizzard of 78, a lot of you probably remember. And then that kind of fascination from looking into those events brought me to where I am today. And like the bottom text says there, it's all history from there. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. And then the right side there, if you believe it, this picture was not taken in Oklahoma or Nebraska or Kansas. This is actually in central Massachusetts back on June 9th, 1953 with the Worcester tornado. They found debris from that tornado on Cape Cod and in Boston Harbor, so that is insane. So just another little stopping point here. The 2017 hurricane season was a very, very awe-inspiring kind of moment for me in my weather career. Top left, you can see Hurricane Maria barreling towards Puerto Rico. Bottom right, Hurricane Harvey making landfall in Texas. And I remember Harvey. I was in Connecticut at the time. And when Harvey made landfall, it actually marked 12 years since the last major hurricane struck the U.S., which was Wilma back in 2005. So it was really a big moment just for weather enthusiasts in general. It was a huge moment. And then same with the bottom left there, 3 simultaneous hurricanes in the Atlantic. We have Katia on the far left, followed by Irma and Jose. That was also a big deal because that does not happen often. And then more importantly, my opportunities in school, right? Swampscott High School has offered me countless opportunities. I mean, this school is practically made for me, right? It has the TV studio, which I've produced documentaries, weather broadcasts, you name it, I've probably done it. And then Mr. Casey's weather class up on the 3rd floor there, I've learned just an incredible amount of stuff that is so useful and that I still carry, obviously, to this day. Just an awesome school, definitely brought many opportunities for me. And like I said, I've done a ton of stuff to help further my career in weather, broadcasting, documentaries, you name it. And I have a little piece of work that I produced for Mr. Doulette's TV class there, if you'd like to show that. It's my documentary on Hurricane Bob.
Today, we're located at Kings Beach in Lynn, Massachusetts, where roughly 30 years ago, in August 1991, a storm of unprecedented strength roared through southern New England, tracking just offshore this beautiful town. Today, we're talking none other than Hurricane Bob. To understand the story of this storm so foreign to our region, we must track it all the way back to August 15, 1991.
Early on the 15th of August, 1991, an area of low pressure appeared well northeast of the Bahamas. Through the day of the 15th, the area looked very disorganized. However, an aircraft mission was sent into the disturbance and found a closed circulation, meaning a center to the storm, along with flight level winds of 37 miles per hour. The disturbance was then labeled a tropical depression only hours later. Roughly 18 hours after being declared a tropical depression, the National Hurricane Center upgraded it to a tropical storm, giving it the name Bob. Throughout the day of August 16th, Bob began to become more organized and an aircraft was sent into the storm, which recorded hurricane force winds. Following this reading, the Hurricane Center upgraded the storm to a Category 1 hurricane. Shortly after this upgrade, the hurricane began to turn towards the northeast, now paralleling the U.S. East Coast due to a dip in the jet stream, known as a trough. Bob then becomes a Category 2 hurricane.
It was then that meteorologists began to realize that Hurricane Bob could very well track over this region. As a result, preparations went underway in southern New England. Longtime residents, however, have seen storms like this before, and they are no stranger to tropical cyclones.
America, thanks to ample warning by the Weather Bureau, New York and New England were ready for the hurricane codenamed Edna, the second big storm to lash the Atlantic seaboard in 12 days.
Hurricanes Edna and Carol both struck this region 11 days apart back in 1954, causing a combined total of almost $1 billion in damage. However, Bob, in just a few days, was about to make history of its own. Shortly after Bob's upgrade to a hurricane watches were issued for the North Carolina and Virginia coastline, and roughly 4 hours after that, the watch was upgraded to a hurricane warning.
So that's just a little bit of my work. You can, if you want to watch more of that, you can head over to my YouTube channel, just my name. And yeah, I was very proud of that one. That documentary came out very well. All right, so applying this passion for weather, this interest to the public, And now what I always say, and what a lot of people say, the good thing about weather is that it's always relevant, right? The first thing you do when you step out on a cold winter morning, you feel, oh, it's, you know, it's cold. And then same with the summer, you walk out, it's like, oh, it's hot. Weather's the first thing you really notice outside. And another good thing is, you know, your passion, you just look outside and you look up and it's there. It's awesome. So on social media, I make almost daily weather forecasts. I usually typically try to confine it to Twitter and Snapchat because that's what most students use, I found out in this school. So if I could help plan their day, I kind of want to get to where they're going to be active the most and see it. So I'll give frequent updates when severe weather is pending. So things like, you know, thunderstorms, maybe intense like our October windstorms, and rainstorms, et cetera, and the timing too. You know, when's it going to start? When's the peak? When's it going to end? Just so fellow students can just plan out their day and not get their day ruined. And then when the more serious stuff comes by, I'll provide almost hourly updates. So things like hurricanes, blizzards. Now obviously it's been 30 years since we had a hurricane strike, which was Bob in '91. So I haven't played that card quite yet, but I'm ready to if it decides to show up. And then blizzards, as you can see in your far right of the screen there, that was a forecast discussion I put out for our blizzard of 2022 that we had a few Saturdays ago. And as you could imagine, snow day forecasts are by far the most popular. The amount of messages I get on Snapchat and Twitter is utterly insane. It is insane. I'll get up to 400, 500 messages of, hey, is there going to be school tomorrow? And I can only provide the weather aspect. I don't know what the school committee is thinking or any of that, but then I get a lot of, isn't that annoying over time? And honestly, I would not trade that for anything. I think it's so fun. I love getting 300 chances to talk about weather, really, is what it is. It's awesome, and I would not trade that for the world. So my plans for the future, right now, if you want to get into meteorology, college is a must. You cannot go anywhere in meteorology without a degree. As I've said earlier, future TV meteorologist, preferably broadcast on the news. And storm chase and save lives, which I'll get to in a second. And just overall make a difference, right? If I can save a few lives, you know, that's potentially 400, 500 people that are saved from grieving, you know, of lost lives. So that would probably be my #1 goal out of my career in the future. So here's some pictures I've actually taken on my little storm chases. Now, the top left one I caught in math class. Believe it or not. Mr. Fusil was kind enough to let me record a thunderstorm outside, so thank you, shout out to him, amazing guy. And then the rest are just summertime thunderstorms, me being a loser, setting my phone to the sky, waiting for 10 minutes of a lightning strike. But yeah, they came out awesome, and here's some more. The bottom two are from our October nor'easter, the windstorm that we had, which I've never seen many more down trees than that. That was unbelievable. Some people were saying it was worse than Bob 30 years ago, so I'm glad to live through that and experience that. That was a really cool sight. So just kind of a little deeper into storm chasing, right? What is it really? Well, besides weather nerds trying to go out there and thrill seek, because I'll admit that's kind of what it is, it's not totally what it is. It's always trying to find new data, right? Whether it's how to build a home better, whether it's trying to warn the public. It's always trying to find this new data and apply that new data to aid advanced warning systems. So whether it be the notification you get on your phone of a tornado warning, or it be, you know, as simple as a tornado siren, any advancements that we could make would 100% save lives. And at the bottom there, it couldn't be more true. Safety of you and everyone else is always first while storm chasing. If you're chasing a tornado and you notice a house has been destroyed, you pull over, you stop your chase, and you help those people because, you know, if you were in their shoes, they would want as much help as they could get. So now, here's the following pictures I'm going to show you. This is just kind of destruction that these insane monsters can cause. It's really heartbreaking. So here's the 1999 Bridge Creek tornado. This one was an EF5, had winds of 300 miles per hour. This one is arguably the largest, most intense tornado ever recorded on Earth. Unfortunately, 36 people did die, and it was caused over 1.5 billion in damage. And here's the monster that caused it. It was about a mile wide. And it just really echoes a meteorologist and storm chaser's worst fear of a large tornado going into a large population center. It's really, there's no nightmare that's more terrifying than that. And then here's Joplin in 2011. You've probably seen it on the news. This was an EF5 as well, destroyed a high school, a hospital, you name it, it left over 167 people dead, the deadliest tornado in almost half a century, and it's also the world's most costliest tornado at nearly $3 billion in damage. This was the tornado at its peak intensity. It's really scary. It's very, very scary. I mean, this is what storm chasers go out there, obviously, to have fun and to watch these spectacles of nature, right? But when that spectacle of nature is one of the strongest tornadoes ever recorded going through a large town, it becomes more of a dire situation than a fun thing. And switching gears now to the tropics, here's Hurricane Andrew in 1992. This one made landfall near Miami with sustained winds of 165 miles per hour. This was also a really bad nightmare. You have a Category 5 major hurricane going right through the heart of South Florida. Not fun at all, and very terrifying for people who went through it. Unfortunately, 65 people did die, and over $27 billion in damage. And there's Andrew at landfall, 5 a.m. on August 24th, 1992. A lot of stories that I get on Twitter, too, of people who survived Andrew. And it's just, there's no more terrifying than that. It's insane. And then here we have Super Typhoon Haiyan, November 2013. One of the most strongest tropical cyclones to ever make landfall. 1 minute sustained winds of 195 miles per hour. Unfortunately, over 6,000 people died in Haiyan when it struck the Philippines. And it caused nearly $3 billion in damage. And here's what Haiyan looked like from space. An utter monster. Would really just, there's no words to describe it, really. So what was really the point of me showing you all that? Well, it's by really getting out there, right? Storm chasing, learning, having these eyes on the ground. You can really minimize the death toll for these natural disasters, especially tornadoes, right? Because if a tornado is going along a path and it takes a slight jog to the right or west or east, right? Then people need to know. And with those eyes on the ground, we can see whether it's taking those jogs to either their east or west, and we can alert people when it's doing that. And the more we learn, it couldn't be more true, the more we learn, the more we can improve. And that's really kind of what my entire future career is going to be, and it is now, is to warning people, being on TV, telling you what your morning's going to be, and then in the event of an extreme emergency, preparing guidelines for you of how to really survive in an intense situation. And then most importantly, improving, right? Getting out there into the elements, learning as much as you can, and hopefully bringing home some really crucial data that we can apply to advanced warning systems. So as I've said, and as you probably know, I have a ton of work to do in my future. Past weather events can happen, 1938 hurricane, Hurricane Carol. That's going to happen again up here in New England. There's no doubt about it. And we have to be ready. There's no two ways about it. It's still going to claim lives no matter how you look at it. But now the question is, how much can we minimize those lives taken? And as I said, there's so much work to do in the meteorology field. There's science to be learned and lives to be saved. No doubt it's going to be fun. I mean, I've loved weather since I was 7 years old. I try to go into every thunderstorm I can. When thunder roars, go indoors, but not for me, really. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be also these times of hardship, right? I mean, I'm going to be witnessing EF4, EF5 tornadoes cutting right through people's lives, really, and destroyed lives all across fields. And yeah, there's going to be despair, there's going to be terror, there's going to be fear. I mean, there's no two ways about it, but there's also going to be a whole lot of adrenaline, and that's really what's going to push that notion to learn as much as you can to really prevent those really catastrophic events from happening. But as you can tell, I couldn't be more ready for it. Like, I'm ready. I've been ready for years. I just want to go out there, make a difference, and really save lives is what it's coming down to. And yeah, that's my past, that's my present, and then that's what my future Swampscott High School graduate self is going to do in the future.
Woo! That was great.
Thank you.
I love your enthusiasm.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank
It's
you.
like addictive. Like, I actually want to go learn more about weather.
Okay,
I
so
recommend.
when you're getting ready to apply for colleges,
Yes.
tell me, are there certain colleges that are known as weather schools?
Yes, great question. There are. Obviously, you have the lower end colleges, so like Salem State, good college, but meteorology program, not really known in the U.S. They don't really have an extensive course. But that's going to be different when you go out to meteorology schools like University of Oklahoma. They have an entire section of their college dedicated to meteorology. It's the School of Meteorology. And then the other one I'm looking into is Northern Vermont University, and they have their whole college is basically around weather. So anybody who goes there is going to be sharing the same passion as me. So that's going to be really exciting, and I think it's going to be an amazing atmosphere to learn in for sure.
So when you're doing your applications.
Yes.
And who are you, do you know who you're competing against? Is it like going into a school for performing arts where you know other kids out there?
Yeah.
Or are you like, listen, I've got my followers, I know.
Yeah, that's a good question. You may, on Twitter, there's a whole weather community, right, on Twitter, and I have interactions with people on there, and then I've also have these past experiences where I've met weather kids at some weather camps. I did one in Penn State back in the day, back about a few years ago, and I did one at Blue Hill Observatory just south of Boston. And you meet kids there who want to go into the same little field as you. And over the years, especially on Twitter, you get closer to them, and then once it's kind of the date nears, you all find out you're either going to the same college or a different one. So, I mean, it's a really close-knit community, and there's no doubt when you go there, you'll know people, for sure. So it's really cool. It is a really cool
Well, I have to tell you my little 6 degrees of separation, and I know that someday I'm going to be able to say, oh, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure that you're going to be on TV.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I was at the dentist, and we were talking about the upcoming storm, and the dentist was talking about Harvey Leonard. And I said, well, I know about Harvey Leonard, but I have to tell you, you're going to think this is crazy, but there's a kid at Swampscott that you should follow. And my hygienist said, Michael Farragamo.
Wow, that's crazy.
And you're famous.
I think I'm more popular than I think I am.
So, yes, so I just.
That's awesome. Yeah, Harvey Leonard, though, what a original. Wow.
I have no doubt we're looking at
Wow.
the Harvey Leonard in the making, so. we're
That was
excited.
great. That was really
Thank you. Thank you.
Really interesting.
I'm glad I got the
listening to someone who's
message.
been doing this for 30 years.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Almost.
Not for nothing, you make me feel like, what have I been doing with my life? I need to get on the
It's
ball.
not too late. It's never too late.
Well, it's exciting to hear also that you've had such great opportunity here at the high school.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know that when they built that weather center, I don't know, it was about 5 or 6 years ago. I remember you were still in middle school, and I talked to your dad, and I was like, I know somebody who's going to love that.
You know what? I honestly probably remember him saying that to me. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
And it lived up.
I know, and so like, not only did the classes support you, but like, the kids in the school, I mean, you
Right.
were so
Oh, yeah.
out, and, your love of it got around to everybody, and now they come to you and they look to you, I mean, like.
Well, look at Maggie.
I know. And 500 questions on Twitter, I mean, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's insane. I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it
And
for
your
anything.
math teacher letting you,
Yeah.
you're like, no, you
what a
gotta
guy.
take a picture
It's
of
awesome.
that storm
Yeah.
out the window,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's awesome. Really
That's
is.
great. It was-
Well, Michael, we're very, very proud of you and your Farragamo
Thank you.
school cast, and we really appreciate you coming to us tonight. And certainly, I follow you before I make it. Friday.
Good to know.
School
Pressure's
committee
on.
has no part of it other than listening to what my call may be. So I depend on you and your expertise.
Awesome. Glad to hear
Thank you so
it.
much.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you,
welcome.
Michael.
It was a dream. Thank you.
Thank you
Michael.
so much.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Let us know when you hear from Oklahoma, we wanna know.
Yeah, I'll make sure to do that.
Oh, you're still waiting to hear from Oklahoma?
I am, yeah. I got into Northern Vermont, so keeping fingers crossed.
Yeah,
All right.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
It'd be crazy not to take it.
they would be crazy not to take it.
I agree.
Well, the next item on my agenda is something that came up at last week's school committee meeting regarding budget. So I've asked our Director of Facilities, Mr. Max Kasper, to be here tonight to speak about the capital requests for FY23. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kasper.
Thank you, Superintendent Angelakis. I believe that I have a few slides that are linked to the, can somebody pull them up?
Let me try.
Go back to the agenda.
Share my screen. Yeah.
want me to pull
I
them
can bring them up if you give me sharing privileges.
It might be easier.
up? I have them. Do you
All
want me to
right,
pull them
there
up?
you
Oh,
go.
you got it? Okay.
Seibert has it too.
Just trying to achieve.
Thank you.
Well,
So just, coming off of last week's meeting where the operating budget discussion started to get into a little bit of a capital discussion, we thought it would be helpful to talk briefly a little bit specifically about capital and to speak a little bit to some of the specific questions that were coming up. So I'm gonna run through the capital process a little bit, talk about some of the, or actually all of the FY23 school capital items that have been requested, talk a little bit about some of the bigger capital projects that are on the plan for future fiscal years, and then also do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the middle school questions that came up last week and are related to capital. So I thought it would be helpful just to quickly run through what the town capital process is. The town maintains a multi-year capital plan that includes all of the school capital projects. These projects are submitted by department heads to the town administration annually, along with capital cover sheets that are used to score the projects through the CIC process. The projects are then reviewed by the town administrator, the capital improvements committee, the finance committee, and the select board, all in advance of being presented at town meeting for final approval. They're generally approved at May town meetings unless there's a special project that comes up at a special town meeting, and are funded to begin July 1 following the May town meetings. So if you can move to the next slide. That's a typo. Sorry, it should be FY23 school projects. I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. So these are all of the school-related capital projects that are on the plan for FY23, or at least have been submitted. So that, there can be some modification as it works through that process, but I thought it would be helpful to let you know what we have submitted and what will be discussed at the upcoming meetings with CIC and moving forward. There's a district-wide network upgrade project that will be managed through the technology department. This is a recurring item that's partially grant funded. Latanya manages that in the tech department. High school energy efficiency upgrades. This is a project that is geared towards starting to look at some of our controls of our HVAC equipment a little bit closer in anticipation of some bigger projects. There's a bigger project I'll get into on a later slide where I'll talk a little bit more about that. High school exterior improvements. We've created a list of a number of capital items for issues at the high school, both on the site and the building envelope that need to be addressed, that this item would fund. High school media center improvements. This is a capital item that follows one from last year as they continue to convert the high school library into a modern media center. I'm sure all of you have seen the really tremendous upgrades that they've made in there already, and this is the next phase of that will include that transformation. High school shop improvements. This is another exciting one where there's a wood shop. There's a better name for it. I'm sorry, but I'm missing it. That has started at the high school this year. They've had a grant infused program with all new machinery, but there are some facilities upgrades that we want to continue to make to that space to support that program. So there's a small capital item to do just that. We have middle school building envelope improvements on the plan for FY23 as well. This is various projects from some door replacements, some masonry repairs, some window related projects. I'll get into that more later on a later slide when we dive into the middle school a little bit. But there's a list of capital improvements. It's not a giant project as you see as 90K. So this isn't a full scale replacement of a building system at the middle school, but there is some immediate need to address some immediate issues. the middle school gym floor. So we will be completely refinishing the entire gym floor with a new paint job, new coating, new poly coating. It'll really look awesome. The middle school miscellaneous systems and facilities. So this is an interior item at the middle school where we have to continue to upgrade some items in the boiler plant hot water system, some items that we've been struggling with in the kitchen and refrigeration systems, and a build out of a shop space for some facilities, offices. And then a camera systems upgrade project. This is town-wide and is piggybacking off a project that we're successfully implementing from last year as well. It's not specific to the schools, it's really town buildings and schools. We've already made some improvements at the high school. That's actually a picture of a new camera that we installed in the high school gym over Christmas break that is pan, zoom, and is really an incredible improvement from what was there. So there's different layers to that project, some kind of less exciting back-end server upgrades that we're making at a number of the schools and the PD and other town buildings, and then more exciting components where we're actually replacing some dated camera units with some new upgraded cameras, and camera technology really moves quickly. So we really see some incredible progress with some of these changes. The tech department in Latanya has been critical to that project implementation. We really work closely on that one. And, I should mention that, the technology department really manages the media center improvements entirely as well. I don't want to take any credit for that. I just support them with that. And then there's a project to purchase some new cleaning machines at the high school. We have a number of machines that are past their useful life, and we need to purchase some new cleaning machines. So that's the list for FY23 projects that we will be requesting and then working to implement over the course of the year after July 1st. Are there any questions on any of these projects before I move on to the next slide?
Max, I haven't looked at the next slides, but is there, I know that the middle school gym floor is a new request. Is there a place where it indicates what is, based on the long-term plan, what are things that are new versus what were slated for the calendar and it's just their turn? I'm not asking. That's a great question. It's not necessarily indicated anywhere. And our goal is to have as much on the plan as possible. Of course, things come up too, and we inevitably add things that we really need and want to do that haven't been on the plan previously. For example, the middle school gym was initially something that was requested for FY24 and 25, but due to some things that happened in the gym and some replacement work that we did in sections of the floor this year, it really makes a lot of sense for us to move that up 1 year and address that this coming year. Some of these items have been on the plan. The camera system upgrade, for example, the network upgrades have been a recurring one. I'm still, relatively new in my position from a capital perspective, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, I hope to continue to get better at sort of predicting longer term what our needs will be. But some of these items do pop up over the course of the year, and we identify them and add them to the plan as such. Thanks.
You're welcome. I think we could move to the next slide. There's a few major projects that are on the plan and for the most part have been on the plan for some future years that are really pivotal to the school district and the town. There's two projects actually on for some interior improvements at the Clark building and exterior improvements at the Clark building. The exact timing is related to the new school project and the middle school project I'm going to talk a little bit about. I think what's important to understand is with some of the future longer term projects, there is opportunity for a lot of discussion with those to really pinpoint the timing as to exactly which year they will fall in. There can be town financial reasons that we need to work to have them be sequenced in a certain way, and obviously there's operational issues with our other projects where other things need to fall in line. So I think both the exact fiscal year that some of these lie, and also the values, the further out we are from them, the less certainty we have as to the scope, and the less certainty we have as to the estimate. So we try and put them on the plan at a spot that we think it's going to be reasonable for them to happen, and give a really initial estimate with the understanding that there's a lot more information to be developed before we can pinpoint numbers. So I don't think it's prudent to put numbers on a presentation like this, because sometimes when you put numbers early on, those numbers stick in people's minds, and it's not always the most helpful thing to do. So we do plan, but I think of it in more order of magnitudes. And that's very much the case for the second one on this, the middle school phased renovation. I'll speak more to this on the next slide, so I won't get into that. But I think that this is really the next significant major capital investment that the town should be anticipating. The next project is relatively newer. The high school is almost 15 years old here, and it's time to start thinking about capital. I know it seems crazy, but it's the truth. It's not that new of a building. So there's a project I've popped on the list a few years out for us to start looking at the rooftop equipment and making some improvements to the roof. This is not going to be a wholesale replacement of those systems, but hopefully something that can be more incremental at a lower cost and really expand the lifetime of those systems. So a lot more to come on that down the road, and it's really preliminary. Actually, one of the projects on an earlier slide was to allow us to start to investigate some of the controls items related to the rooftop equipment and sort of plan for longer term capital improvements to the rooftop equipment at the high school, which will be a major item at some point in the future. And then also one that's further down on the plan, but will be potentially pretty major is improvements to the parking lot and site at the high school. It will need to be repaved at some point. We are starting to see some wear and tear with potholes and the like, and I think it'll be an opportunity to look and see if there's other site things you want to do at the same time. Maybe it's actually come up a few times recently. People have asked me about access to Jackson Park. It's a little awkward getting from the high school to the lower Jackson field right now, and I've heard some stories of people actually falling on the hill, and I think that could be an opportunity in a bigger project to look at that and maybe create a nice access down to the lower Jackson. So those are nothing that we wanted to go in depth to, other than a little bit on the middle school on the next slide, but just to kind of put it on everyone's radar of what is sort of on my mind, on the district's mind for the future.
A quick question, what does RTU stand for?
Rooftop units. So that's the heating equipment that sits on top of the high school that does all ventilation and heating. There's a number of units, 10, 11, 12. Some of them of different variety, some of different size, but they're really pivotal to the HVAC at the high school.
Hey, Max, I want to make a plug for when you're doing the parking lot, fix the light.
It's done.
Oh, it is?
Done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, my God, thank you.
So there you go.
Yes, it's done.
Hey, how great is that?
And I thought this was a really good opportunity to start talking in this forum about what's on our minds for the middle school. So as I referenced earlier, the middle school is really needs to be next on the radar. We're all consumed right now by the elementary school project, and rightfully so. And there's a lot to do with that still. But I think we've learned from the past that we need to be looking to the future sooner rather than later, or else we're going to be behind the 8 ball. So at the middle school, we have many building systems that are in need of major capital upgrades, including but not limited to the HVAC plant, the HVAC distribution system, electrical service, electrical distribution, accessibility, fire protection, plumbing systems, windows and doors, kitchen services, interior finishes. Unfortunately, that's not the comprehensive list, and this was memorialized in the Habib report a few years back, and that's where we stand at the middle school. There hasn't been significant capital investment in that building until recently, some of the things that we've done. So because of that, the way that I think we should be thinking about it is comprehensively. And I'm really targeting a phased major renovation of this building in the coming years following the opening of the new elementary school. Some of the priorities for that renovation that we are foreseeing is, equity for affected grades. And what I mean by that is, obviously, we're going to have some grade levels that are going to be most impacted by the transition to the new elementary school, and with the swing time and moving parts. And we want to be really sensitive to that the same grade levels that sort of absorb the brunt of that and may not even get access to the new elementary school don't get put in that same position with a future middle school project. I think that's a really important thing that a few people have pointed out to me, and it might seem minor, but I really think it isn't. And that equity of that is really important in this planning. And because I'm envisioning it as a phased project, I really think we're going to have the ability to do that if we time it right and we sequence it appropriately. It can really do justice to that element. Educational programming is another important item. What I don't want to do is attack individual items at the middle school, individual systems, year after year after year. It's going to be a tremendous amount of work for us as a district to be continuously doing giant projects at that building and disruptive to the building. B, it's not going to be grant funded as it potentially could be through an MSBA project. And then finally, it doesn't give us the opportunity to look at the building from an educational programming perspective and do it comprehensively and make changes so that the building can be used like a modern educational building. A lot of the same processes that we've gone through at the new elementary school, we would have a similar opportunity with a renovation at the middle school. We'll obviously want to target the neediest sections of the building. It's not one building that was built at one time. It's actually two segments. There's a 1950s building and there's a 1970s building. And the 1950s building, the Shaw Wing, is really clearly in the worst shape, and is the problems there are rearing their head. So I do think that will be the section we'll want to target first. And obviously, financial responsibility. We want to time it right. We want to, work closely with the town so that the finances can be done as responsible as possible. And I think reusing an existing building can probably be a project that will be less expensive than in the long term than a full build of a new middle school at some point down the road. And will really buy us a tremendous amount of time from actually having to do that, beyond the time that any of us are probably working in the district or for the community, 50 plus years, I think. So I think that's a really responsible approach. So with this project that I'm referencing here, we are exploring the proper timing submit a statement of interest for this project. It's not right now. It's too soon to do that, but it's coming up. You know, it could be in the coming years here. You know, we're looking at it with the MSBA process of when that would be most appropriate to kind of get in the cycle, and we'll keep that on our radar. And I wanted to point out that, you know, in the meantime here, we're not just going to ignore the building. We're going to continue to make incremental capital improvements as needed in anticipation of the major renovation. We're doing a major roof project right now. There's a fire alarm project that's been funded, and we are advancing, and we are looking closely at the windows. We're doing some window repairs right now. To get a little more into that. So there's select windows in the building that are really failed and have water infiltration issues that are a major problem. We've worked with an architect. We've brought in weatherization experts to look at it, and we've targeted a shorter term project to do some weatherization on some of the neediest windows, where they're going to change all of the weather stripping, change hardware, change locking mechanisms, and they feel as though they can get the existing windows operating properly, and we're really hoping that will mitigate the infiltration and allow us to, you know, do the window project in sequence with a major renovation down the line. Now, that's not a guarantee. There is a possibility that we will have to do some window replacements, a major capital project in the meantime, before we get to the point where we can do a major project like I'm describing. But there are things we can try and do and are advancing that are more financially responsible, and at least gives us an opportunity to see if that can work, and we can buy some time, frankly, because it's really important to me that we do as much as possible together, because the systems integrate with each other. To do the windows alone is not ideal, because, for example, there are air conditioners cut into a lot of the existing windows. So if we put brand new windows into the building, we're likely going to be cutting in wall unit air conditioners into some of them, where if we can sequence them and do it with a major project, it'll be happening with an HVAC project where air conditioning is brought in and there would be no need. Also, there's things on the outside of the building shell that you want to do at the same time that you're staged for a window project. Things with the building envelope. So to do it out of sequence is inefficient and just not ideal. So we're going to try and avoid that, acknowledging that there's a possibility that we won't be able to solve it completely in the interim and may need to advance a larger window project early. So that is my position on the middle school plan and the end of my presentation. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Thank you, Max. I think with the questions that came up last week, this was really thorough. You know, we know the plan, we know what the future years look like, but it was great for you to come and share it with everybody and share it with the committee as well.
I just have to say, over 10 years, I remember sitting here at one point, trying to work with the school committee, trying to figure out what our priority was, and the school committee with the superintendent was sitting here trying to figure out whether or not we were prioritizing a window over a roof. And it's absurd, because we have zero skill in that. So I really appreciate your role here, but I don't want to downplay that simply as somebody who knows the difference between windows and doors and whatnot, because the level of sophistication that you bring to this in terms of how this is not just a building project, but a series of projects that are part of a school district, to hear you speak about the impact on students and and the planning that goes into that. I just, you know, I don't know if you saw, but like I was sitting here shaking my head, and it was really for no other reason that, you know, there was, I just remember, you know, Pam, the superintendent working, you know, when the roof blew off of Hadley, and thinking, this is not where we need our superintendent to be focusing her time. And I'm so very grateful, Max, to have you as part of this team and to see the acumen that you bring to this. So I just, this is not, I'm thrilled to know this. I'm thrilled to know that this is what's happening. I'm also thrilled to know that that this is not, that I'm not making these decisions because this is not my skill. So thank you, and kudos to you, Superintendent, for creating this team. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know if anybody has any questions or.
I just, let me pull this over. So Max, thank you for that. You know, just to add on to what Amy said, it was very detailed, and, you know, we appreciate that level of detail. You know, I think just going forward, you know, I'm interested in, you know, you said the middle school project is years off. You know, as you get a better sense of what that means, is that 2 years? Is that 5 years? I think that would be helpful just to kind of know, you know, where we stand as a town, and, you know, what this project, you know, what it entails as far as, you know, costs going forward, just based on those timelines. So I just wanted to throw that out. I know at this point it's probably tough to have your crystal ball, but just to keep that in mind going forward.
I would
Sure,
agree.
yeah, and there are, you know, there are other factors that go into that. So I think there's probably an ideal timeline for me, but it's going to need to be a collaboration with multiple people and groups to pinpoint that timing. So I appreciate that.
And I think it's going to be important for the town and the finance committee to be able to sort of see, you know, to have some sort of sense of over the long term. To your point, things are going to change, but to be able to have a sense of, ideally, if you were to plan, where do those things get slotted, knowing that yes, there are going to be changes.
Funded.
What was that?
And funded, like the money to think about, you know, what's rolling off debt. When something's rolling off, can we put a middle school project on? Like that timing is
Right, and then
very
you back
critical.
into, right, when do you submit a statement of interest? And
Right,
when do
like you don't want to do it too soon
Right.
because, you know.
You're not ready.
You get in, if you try it and you get in your
Right.
first time, then you have to do it. So
Right.
you have to just,
Yeah.
you know, if you try it your second time and you get in, you know, that might be better timing. If you try your second time and you don't get in, then all of a sudden you're forced to,
You gotta
wait
move.
another year.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, quite a few variables. Any talk about doing the parking lot at the middle school, Max?
You know, given that some consideration as well, I think as the timeline for the middle school project comes into focus here, we can see whether or not that's one of these items that we need to accelerate, and it likely is. And the good thing about that is that that one's not going to impact other building systems so much. So that's what I have on that.
How about, I just have another question. Biden's infrastructure bill, is there can we use that for some of these repairs?
So I actually have a meeting tomorrow with the group for the ARPA fund, and I think that the answer is maybe. So we'll.
It's a really good government answer right there.
I should have more clarity on that after our meeting tomorrow, but something worth looking into for sure.
Yeah, it'd be really great to see. I mean, I know there's a lot of green initiatives too, like, you know, is there a way to, you know, purchase solar panels for our new school, or, you know, sort of integrate, you know, work on the EUI of the middle school and the high school, or something, you know, something else like that. Just throwing it out there. Curious. Thanks. Awesome.
No problem.
That concludes my report, Madam Chair. And the next item on the agenda is our Director of Finance.
Right. So Ms. Seibert, before we get into the details of your presentation, I felt like it was a good opportunity for you, the superintendent, and me to update the board on the conversation that we had with the town manager and his finance team last Friday. Because I know that played a role in the direction that you guys have taken over the last couple of days. So anyway, I've made a couple of notes, but I do want to say specifically to you, Ms. Seibert, and to you, Superintendent, to please chime in, especially as I just want to make sure that I have hit all the salient points. So last Friday, we met with the town manager, along with Amy Sorrow and Patrick Luddy. Thank you for getting that. Polly did not attend. Sean outlined where he saw the budget. This was the first time that he had met with the superintendent and the business manager, as well as myself, to talk about where he needed our budget to be. It was not a surprise, which was, it fell at the 2.8, which was the 2%. Plus new growth. So that's sort of where we were working on. We did have some difference of opinion as it related to what the starting point was, and we've talked about that as a group, which was that $190,000 that had been cut from our budget last year. Sean would like us to be starting from the cut number as opposed to the 180. We had a fair amount of discussion of why it was important for us to be starting with that 180, because we felt like it really reflected what the true costs were, especially as as we move forward with growth. And the other piece, and I know I have spoken individually with some of you, was that, there was some discussion, and I asked for some clarity on this and have not heard anything back, was that very specifically we agreed when asked last year to cut that money. It was because of predicted shortfalls in town revenues, and those predicted shortfalls because of COVID. And so I asked Sean if, in fact, those numbers came out as predicted. I have not heard an answer from either he or from Polly. From little bits that I have gleaned in other conversations, and I know, everybody else is privy to the same kinds of select board meetings that I am. I don't believe that the numbers fell where they are, but I don't have confirmation of that.
Meaning that the numbers came out better than they anticipated, or the drastic shortfalls they were expecting didn't happen?
Yes.
So I'm sorry, you said you have not heard back?
I have not heard back from him.
That's disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
To say the least. It's disappointing for the administrator of the community and the select board, to be perfectly honest with you, that, we are, these numbers are very important to this district, the students, the faculty, and the staff. So I would hope that the powers that be will get back to you. I feel it's just appropriate to do as soon as possible.
Superintendent or Ms. Seibert, have you heard any?
No, I haven't. And I just wanted to also reiterate what we talked about at last week's meeting, that though we were asked to reduce our budget by 180,000, we weren't able to do that. We never really reduced it. We transferred those 3 buckets over to our grants. So that's why when Mrs. O'Connor says, you know, it demonstrates the reality of our budget. So we never reduced, we just shifted funds to one of the ESSER grants. So no, I haven't heard anything.
So I think over the long term, it was important not to necessarily, I think it was important to drive home that we wanted to begin with that $180,000 back in our budget because it accurately reflected what it was that the school needed to educate.
And, well, I mean, can I add that, I mean, I distinctly remember those conversations, and we were very clear that we could not cut $180,000, but that we had a one-time opportunity to use these grant monies that we've never had before to do this. It was a one-time thing. And we were also very clear at the time that come this year, we would not be starting from that reduced number. I mean, we couldn't have said it any clearer. We cannot start from that reduced number. That 180 will have to be back in there to begin. And, I mean, it was made known. So, yet again, we're at a point where we're coming back with, you know, full faith. We did what we could do, and we're just asking to start at the fair, correct level. And I just feel like they're not being fair with us in return. Does that make sense?
Well, I think it's certainly not, even if it's a question of fairness, I think that they're not being clear because the agreement...
I'm using that word to try to not use a worse word, like honest. Do you know what I mean? Like.
Okay, fair. But,
very good of you. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
But I think importantly, because it was around the understanding that that the budget was cut for a very specific reason, which was the worry that we were not that the town was not going to hit targets.
Right.
And so with that, it made sense, and as partners, it made sense to share the burden. So it concerns me that we would share in the burden.
And not be made whole, and also not even find out if, in fact...
what the truth is.
Right.
So that's a piece of it. So I just want to kind of touch on some of the other issues. Amy Sorrow did outline their rising healthcare costs, that they were hitting almost a 9% hike. Is that?
Yeah, potentially.
Potentially.
You know, there are a number of plans offered under the GIC, and the range of increase is anywhere from 3 to 9%. The average last year was a 5.5 overall, and that's what she's carrying in the budget right now. So if it comes in north of that, we could be in some trouble, but if it comes in at 5.5, then we're good.
Okay. We did talk about the fact that that we used to include our technology spend in the capital improvements, and that rightfully we all agreed that that was not the right place for us to be carrying capital improvement monies. However, that it would make sense during the transition out of that process to work into the budget logical growth to cover that. You know, there was some disagreement in the moment about whether or not those were monies that we could absorb. You know, there was discussion about the fact that at the beginning of COVID, the town was generous with us and did give us monies from CARES Act to pay for a fair amount of technology. But, you know, we talked extensively about the fact that these are not one-time monies, that this is, sort of a continual, in the same way with capital improvement, that these are continual investments. And so part of, the superintendent and Ms. Seibert have included, as we talked about last week, Ms. McInall's technology plan into the budget plan this year. So for clarity, for anybody who's looking for information on that, that will also be available online, and it'll be, you'll be able to access it in multiple different ways, so that it's not just part of this year's budget, but part of a continual reference. I think where we hit a real stumbling block was as it relates to circuit breaker funds and how we spend circuit breaker funds, what circuit breaker is really what it's used for. And the request was made by Sean for the school department to sort of spend against it in higher, sort of at a higher percent, a higher rate than we were prepared to do. We hit a real stumbling block here because I think that it really represented, it represents a way to spend that is not best practice. I'm going to definitely defer to you here, Ms. Seibert, because I think that your acumen has brought us to a really good place. I know, 5 years ago, we were really living from year to year without having the benefit of a year in reserves, as is best practice for our circuit breaker. Sean really sort of pushed forward the idea that, in extraordinary times, it makes sense to perhaps take extraordinary measures and to spend a little bit differently. We didn't meet this.
Yep.
We didn't meet this particularly well.
Well, that's bad business for a school district to do that.
But also, we just came off a meeting last week where we talked about the amount of out-of-district placements and the amount of kids that are having social emotional issues and needing to pay for placements and have extra health care or mental health care providers like helping in the system here. We need that circuit breaker money to make sure, we don't go that we can afford the bills that are going to come that we don't know about right now.
I want to turn this over to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think Mrs. Wright, you just hit the nail on the head, that one of the provisions in that law with circuit breaker is that you are able to carry forward your current year award in full into the next year to give you budget certainty and to allow for those unexpected costs that may happen. I think that I liken circuit breaker to your best practice is to not fund your operating budget from free cash. Well, best practice is to not fund your current year special education costs from your current year award. That's just not best practice.
Right.
And by depleting it, which was the suggestion, it goes against everything that you would think is normal. It's not a piggy bank, it's a budget certainty because it is such a volatile expense from one year to another. And it's volatile even in what your award could be. If we have 3 children who are in high out-of-district placements, and they all age out in the same year, our award going forward is going to drop significantly. It's budget certainty both ways in terms of protection and in planning.
Just the suggestion that you do that does not come from a place of someone who is looking to protect the school district or, I'm sorry,
If I may?
Yes, please.
So John and I had a conversation today, and I appreciate that conversation, and it was really well. So just for the community, before I get into specifics, just want to read what a circuit breaker is, because I'm sure most people really don't know. And thank you to Ms. Raymond for your help with this. Circuit breaker, the state special education reimbursement program, commonly known as circuit breaker program, was started in FY04 to provide additional state funding to districts for students that have high-cost special education programming. Districts are financially responsible for a foundation amount, which in FY21 was approximately $46,000 per student in the pool. And again, as Ms. Seibert says, that money, just take the $46,000 as an average, okay? Districts are reimbursed anywhere between 70 and 75% of the costs above the foundation amount in the next fiscal year. Since expenses are incurred in the current year for any student with high-cost special education programming, and this expense can be an unknown during the budget projections, it is critical to keep 1 year's worth of circuit breaker monies available to provide budget certainty, again, as Ms. Seibert said, and fiscal responsibility while meeting the requirements of providing a free and appropriate public education to students. To put it in perspective, and again, thank you for Superintendent, for your staff for providing me with these numbers. FY21 claim, the District of Swampscott had 26 eligible students. That's what we claimed. Total expense is approximately $3,000. Foundation amount, our bottom line bedrock responsibility as a district, is about $1.3 million.
What was the $3,000?
It's $3 million.
$3 million. What did I say?
Yeah, you said 3,000.
Oh,
It's $3
sorry.
million.
$3 million.
What bargain is that?
Sorry. $3 million in total expenses. Foundation amount is $1.3 million. Net instructional and tuition costs is $1.6 million. I want to just stop there for a second. I'd like the public to realize that for 26 claimed students, the net instructional and tuition costs were $1.6 million.
So that's the difference between
The foundation amount?
what the,
The foundation amount and the circuit breaker.
Correct.
And what, 27 children?
26.
With 26 with needs.
26 children. And as you carry this forward, our net claim for this circuit breaker program was $1.64 million. 75% reimbursement, which is fantastic because it could be 70, is $1.2 million. Again, to Ms. Seibert's comment, in FY19, where we only had 20 students in the pool, our total reimbursement was only $821,000. So basically, we're getting a reimbursement of $400,000 more.
so to be clear, the suggestion is only to prepay for other, it's not to use the money for anything, and I want to be clear for this for the public. The suggestion is not to use this money to pay for anything other than special education services.
Absolutely. And to
But it's the
anyone,
amount of prepay.
correct. And to anyone who suggests otherwise, and for some of the language that was used that we are privy to, is disappointing to those professionals that are running this town. It sets a very dangerous precedent for the question that was asked of us. And I would hope that the elected and appointed officials who oversee the administration of this community take a look at what is A, fiscally responsible, and B, morally responsible. Because I know that we as a district watch each and every penny, let alone each and every dollar. And it is far better to where when I sat in this chair 10 years ago. So kudos to the superintendent, kudos to the staff who watch this budget like a hawk. And I would hope that the suggestion that was made by the professionals that are running this town are rescinded and an apology is given to specifically the chair of this committee who was sitting in that meeting and to the community in general. Circuit breaker is far from a game. Circuit breaker guarantees that a parent knows that their son or daughter will be educated as required by law in the best manner possible from age 3 to age 22.
Well, the thing is, that's a law. We have to educate them in the best possible, least restrictive environment, right?
Right.
The problem is, we have to pay for that, and if we don't have circuit breaker money, it's coming out of the general budget.
Right.
And that's where the rub is,
Right.
because we have to, by law,
Right.
pay whatever tuition we have to pay
Right.
that's the, I
Right.
mean, parents know their kids are gonna get a great education here and an appropriate placement, but now it's up to us to figure out how to pay for it.
Right.
And that comes out of the other side of the budget,
Right. Comes out of the other bucket.
right?
It affects everybody.
Right. It absolutely, and I remember, and I was talking to a couple of people today about this, what even got me involved way back in 2004 was several people in the community trying to draw a wedge between regular ed and special ed. And I know that, A, it was very hurtful at the time, but B, we don't think that way
No,
any longer.
we don't do that.
And I don't think anyone should think that way. And hopefully, what was suggested will be rescinded and never discussed again. Thank you.
Glenn, just to, and I appreciate all those comments that you said, and, I think, Suzanne, your comment about, it's got to come from somewhere, that's the thoughts that's been going through my head listening to all of this. It's like, I don't know what that entails specifically, if that worst-case scenario came to pass, if this suggestion was actually adopted, but, teacher layoffs, other programs cut. I mean, I could see all kinds of terrible things happening, and who's going to suffer at the end of the day? The children,
The
right?
kids.
Right. And it's just, it seems completely inappropriate to have that scenario.
Right. So just to offer a little history, John, that's one of the reasons this was started in FY04. That's not a long time ago.
No.
And that's why it was started, because districts were being forced to pit side A versus side B, and there were layoffs.
It's interesting you say that, because when I first came onto the committee, and we started talking about circuit breaker during the last budget season, I did the same thing that you did, Glenn. You said, what's circuit breaker? I was like, what is this thing? And you're right, it's for, and as Ms. Eibert said, it's for budget certainty, so there aren't these hiccups and, uncertainties out there. So yes, you're absolutely right.
So you're not robbing from one group to pay for another.
Robbing, Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
Wow.
I have to say, that's one of the clearest descriptions of circuit breaker I've ever heard. So,
Well, again, thank you to Ms. Seibert and Ms. Raymond for their generous use of their time in helping me research this.
thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you for the superintendent for allowing them to do that. I appreciate that.
So I think that that hits the big pieces of our conversation on Friday. The good news is that despite the fact that it was only the first time that we were getting guidance from the town, that the number was not a surprise, that 2.8 is exactly where we anticipated. It doesn't change much. I mean, I know that last week we were struggling with that 2.8, and I know that the superintendent and Ms. Seibert are looking forward to some new information tonight. But I think the other big piece of the puzzle is that starting point, that 180,000, which, on one hand, I feel like I could argue this in a lot of different directions, but on one hand, I feel like this isn't, we're talking about a $32 million budget.
Right.
And It's not a big piece of the puzzle. But I think that from a sort of a truth in budgeting perspective, and especially when we, when we are working to justify every cent that we're spending, to sort of flippantly say, okay, well, let's start with 180,000 less, really is just sort of a dart on the board rather than an actual number, because the true number is that number with
It is.
$180,000 baked in.
Right,
It's what we spent last year.
right.
So, so I think, that's where we were as of last Friday.
So I'm assuming the 180 is still in our budget.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent and Ms. Seibert, and we'll look for their recommendations. But I think, because as Ms. Seibert has pointed out, up until the end of tonight, this is still the superintendent's budget.
Right.
So it's up, they're going to make the recommendations, and then tonight is when we vote, and it will become the school committee budget.
Okay.
So.
I'm going to bury the lead because tonight's presentation, I'll take a little step back. So Wednesday, the 26th, we talked about the overview. We reviewed administration, regular day, and special education cost centers. Last week, we did school facilities, district-wide programs. We held the public hearing, again, answered committee questions. And tonight is really grants revolving fund, an FTE review, and then school committee questions and the school committee vote. And so at the end of my presentation on grants, revolving fund, and FTEs is when the superintendent and I will recap the budget that we're recommending the committee vote on. After the committee votes tonight, it becomes your budget. It's what I delivered to the town administrator. If it's not within guidance, the town administrator is going to cut it to be within guidance. He's not going to cut a specific line. He's just going to change the overall total as is his purview. And then it would go to finance committee and eventually town meeting. And I'm not casting him in the role of a bad guy. He has to present a balanced budget to finance committee and to town meeting. So, and I appreciated the meeting that we had last Friday. It was thoughtful. There was a lot of good discussion, and we got some clarity on where we need to be. So with that, I will start tonight's agenda as federal grants, state grants, revolving funds, some FTE analysis, and then obviously questions and the vote. So most of our federal grants are what we call entitlement grants, meaning they're awarded to us on the basis of a formula set forth by laws and different regulations. We're entitled to receive those funds because we comply with certain programmatic requirements. And most of our state grants are a combination of competitive and continuation. So here are the grants that we have currently. Our federal grants are at the top of this chart. We have the smorgasbord of titles. We have Title I, Title IIA, Title III, Title IVA, IDEA, and the early childhood grants. I do have slides in here that go into more specificity about what each of those grants are, but just at a high level, Title I provides supplemental resources for children with opportunities to receive a fair and equitable education. It's really predicated on economic disadvantage. Right now, the Clark, Hadley Middle School and High School are all receiving and using Title I funds. In FY23, we plan to continue to use these funds to fund some math and literacy tutors and to stipend holders for some community engagement and homeless liaison. And our Title IIA funds, those are used to increase teacher excellence, improve high-quality teaching, and we're using those funds to fund math coaches. Title III is supplemental for ELL, English language learners. Title IVA provides a supplement for children have access to, it's more on the social emotional, children have access to high-quality educational experiences. So those are our titles, and then the IDEA grant is a grant that, so the title grants are overseen by a combination of Dr. Bacon and Mrs. Raymond, and then the IDEA grant and early childhood grants are overseen by Mrs. Raymond and Student Services, and they're focused on students with disabilities that they receive a free and appropriate education. Yes?
Can you remind me in 21 why the Title I grant dropped by?
Sure. This one came as actually as a surprise to Dr. Bacon and I, and we scratched our heads for a while on this one. Swampscott had, by the federal standards, or the way they were counting students, I don't know that we ever dug deep enough to find their metric. We had a 20% reduction in the number of children living in poverty between FY21 and FY22, which our state data doesn't support that. But because we fell below a 5% threshold to be eligible for a certain tier of funding, that's why there was a reduction to our Title I entitlement grant, if you will.
Significant.
Wow, that's massive.
Yeah.
It was. I will say this, that, and I appreciate the question, and I said this to the superintendent when we reviewed it earlier today. I have the award year. Our title federal funds are flexible in terms of being able to carry them over year to year. The state ones are not. State grants end on June 30th. And because of, it's almost serendipitous that it happened, but our title award in FY19, I believe it was, we had budgeted to hire a .5 teacher that got delayed because we didn't have candidates, and it was delayed and delayed and delayed, and we didn't end up hiring someone until May of that year. So we rolled forward a significant amount of money.
Oh, I do
So it
remember that.
hasn't really hurt us, if you will, in some ways, because we had carry forward funds, unintentionally carry forward funds. And I want to say very clearly, that's not our method of operation. We don't budget to carry forward funds. We budget to use them in the current year. But it just inadvertently happened with that one in that year. So
it's not that our population changed, but that the data that they use to calculate it changed.
yes, and I'll pause if I don't know. I don't want to put Dr. Bacon on the spot if she knew any more about it or not. I'll give her a moment to speak. Yeah, she's got her hand up, so maybe Dr. Bacon might want to add a little more color commentary on that.
Yeah, I really tried to dig into it to try to figure out why there was this dramatic drop. And it was very difficult, and I never got to the actual bottom of it, but it was also related to changes in the 2020 census. So that was the big difference is, the projections for 10 years are based on projections out from the last decennial census and something called the current population survey. But then in 2020, we had a new census, which gave us a new baseline, which is, I think is what really changed the calculations in FY22.
Because that sort of changes the story, at least from that one piece of data, in terms of how our district has changed over the last couple of years. And
absolutely, because we report our enrollment on October 1st, and that was the data point that Dr. Bacon and I were looking at and saying, like, this doesn't make sense to us, because that's not what we're seeing in the data that we're reporting to the state. And
Right, because we know from free and reduced lunch.
Yeah.
What our population, how our population falls. So if that's going to continue, if that's our new baseline, that's every year, then that is.
Well, we don't. I projected FY23 awards to be flat because there's two different schools of thought. One is that there's so much pandemic money in the pipeline that grants might not go up by a considerable percentage year over year. Some doomsdayers say they might go down a little bit year over year. So I thought it was conservative, just forecast it'll be flat with next year.
So the problem is that when the federal grant monies dry up, that those things haven't kept pace.
We'll see. We'll see what happens with FY23. Those awards, I think they'll be out within the next month or so, won't they? I thought I saw an email on that the other day. No, Jean's saying no.
Okay.
So the next set of grants there are state grants. And so the METCO grant. This is a voluntary program intended to expand educational opportunities and to increase diversity and reduce racial isolation by permitting students in certain cities to attend public schools and other communities that have agreed to participate. And Swampscott's been a proud participant in the METCO program for many years now. And so that first line there is the grant funds that support our METCO program. The next line is Capital Skills Grant. And Mr. Kasper spoke about this a little bit. He called it the wood shop, and I don't know, that's a term that I would use too, go back to my high school days. But we have a lovely program that we're growing here, and that $74,000 was a competitive grant that we received, and we've used to help buy a number of tools and supplies for that program. The Comprehensive School Health Grant, that's a multi-year grant. It was supposed to only be $5,000 a year. That's a grant that our lead nurse, Emily Silly, applied for when I first was here, and we were thrilled to get it. And during the pandemic, they've increased our award. Last year, we received $20,000. This year, our award is $17,600. I've dropped it back down to $5,000 because I know that's the minimum that we'll get next year, but that may increase as well. And then there's a few other safe and supportive schools. That was a multi-year competitive grant. The Innovation Pathways, I skipped over that one, I apologize. That's another grant that Dr. Bacon brought to the district that has helped with the capital skills. If we do get a grant next year, I don't think that it'll be for more than $15,000, and we didn't want to put it in there because there's no guarantee that we'll be allowed to apply for more funding for that one. The Safer School and Communities, that $54,000 that we had back in FY20, again, that was a one-time competitive grant that Miss Mackie Knowles went after, and that bought some technology that bought the swipe cards for our doors. So I think that the superintendent and her team, we do a great job of going after grants. The one at the bottom, the Social Emotional Learning and Mental Health Grant, that's one that Mr. Craig Harris just secured for the district, $34,300. So we actively seek out grant opportunities when we can, and try to utilize funds to help keep initiatives moving forward. And then the last section there has the circuit breaker grant. I just wanted to capture that as well. And we've already talked about what circuit breaker is, so I don't think I need to go into that. So I'm going to slide past all these slides that kind of talk about it and get into, I should pause for a minute. Are there any questions on our federal entitlement and state grants before I get into the pandemic grants?
Do we have one spot where it's outlined where all of those, oh, never mind. I'm jumping ahead.
Oh, the pandemic grants? Here you go. So I did present a presentation to the committee. I want to say it might have been in July of last year about pandemic grants. And so some of these slides I resurrected from that presentation and upgraded. This is just a very high level. This is a DESI slide of the amount of money that was being infused into the Commonwealth for funds to help support districts during the pandemic, and kind of gave a timeline of the sequencing of it. And the next slide, I'm a little fast with the mouse. The next slide is really our sequencing, for our grants. The ESSER 3 grant, that $1,482,000, that I couldn't update it because this is a PDF image. Our actual award is a little bit more of that. It's $1,403,000. So in case anyone is looking, ticking and tying numbers, there is a difference between the two. But these are some of the grants that we've received, and kind of the sequencing of when they sunset. So ESSER 1 was done or is done in June of this year. We've already spent ours in full. ESSER 2 carries through September of 2023, and ESSER 3 sunsets in September of 2024. But I wanted to, this is a better slide showing our awards. Again, ESSER 3 is the larger one. We could have applied for it in FY21. We didn't need to, so we waited to submit our application until FY22. It didn't extend the life any. It was still going to be good through September of 2024. There was 2 surprise grants this year. Mrs. Raymond and I, there was a little more ARPA money or ARP money for IDEA and IDEA early childhood. And that is money that's useful only for this year. It's not carry forward. We did have some summer vacation learning grant money that was used already. That $50,000 helped fund some of the summer learning programs that occurred earlier this year at the high school. But I'll get into some more slides that show really what we've spent to date. So our CARES money, our COVID relief fund, was fully spent as of June 30th. We purchased air purifiers, COVID testing for staff when we first reopened, when we first went into in-person in September, it seems so long ago, in September of 2020 when we came back. We ordered dividers and partitions. The facilities was purchasing those tents that were erected at all of our schools. Mobile water stations that you can see the image there. We bought some of those at the elementary level. Food services, out-of-district tuition. A huge part of it was for technology purchases. Again, the tents for the schools and transportation, because we moved the 3rd and 4th graders, you may recall, to the gymnasium at the high school, and that we ran a shuttle bus every day from Stanley to the high school. So that grant was fully spent. The remote learning grant, I mean, this one was another one that Ms. Mackey-Knowles and I looked at each other and said, well, why not apply for it? We might get some money. And lo and behold, we got almost $57,000. That it was a matching grant, and we matched it with funds from the town's CARES, and we used it to purchase 300 iPads. The state coronavirus prevention fund was $83,000 that we received. It was one-time money, had to be spent by June 30th. We did. We used it to fund half the salary for the occupational health nurse and the technology specialist. The first 4 months were funded from the town CARES, and the town CARES ended in December, and we picked it up in January with this money. So we were able to fund 100% of their salaries in fiscal 21 from grant money. And then the summer learning loss grants, one was for $11,000. That one was used for tutors during the school year and after school, and then $50,000 award was used over the summer for the summer learning loss program that ran at the high school. ESSER 1, that was the baby one. That was the first one that we got for $149,000, and that has been fully spent. We used it for after-school teaching and other stipend work. Some of that stipend work was to plan how to teach remotely and to train our teachers on how to teach remotely. This was money that we had early on during the pandemic. We used it for a lot of our software subscriptions, for Zoom, for Seesaw. We used it for supplies and materials for the bins that went home with kids while we were remote. And a good chunk of it, almost $47,000, was used to help fund the summer learning program that ran at the high school this past summer. ESSER 2 is ongoing. This one is for $645,000. The bulk of it is being used this year. It's funding the occupational health nurse, the tech specialist. It's funding a reading teacher. It's funding a guidance position. It funded some of the tutors that taught over the summer here at the high school. It funded some purchase services. That was our COVID payment for our collaborative. It funded some technology needs for instruction and other PPE and building needs. We were burning through quite a bit of PPE masks when we first started back this year, and we used ESSER funds to pay for it. Going forward, next year, it's going to continue to fund a reading and guidance. And so one of the things that I'll talk about in our presentation at the end, we did ultimately meet the guidance that the town asked us to, and part of it was by shifting technology, once again, from our operating budget to a grant. And so that $55,000 in next year is part of the $175,000 request for technology. We're going to try and fund it out of ESSER 2.
So the monies that we have gone to capital for in the past, that theoretically should be part of our operating budget, we're going to put into grant monies.
We're going to use part of our ESSER funds for. Yeah.
So I mean, this is going to be a hard conversation that we're going to have with FinCom about
Because yet again.
Forward
next
planning,
year, we're
because
coming-
It's going to be a harder conversation next year.
Yeah, because it's like, it's just another can that gets kicked down the road, okay? So,
Yeah.
so what gets cut?
Yeah. So ESSER 3, which was the most significant grant that we received for almost 1.5 million, this is funding, again, a number of positions this year and into next year. The Director of Social Emotional Learning, 2 reading teachers, a math interventionist, the K-6 floater subs that have been so critical to our operations this year at the elementary and the middle school level. It's going to fund the future years of summer learning loss. And as we already spoke earlier to the committee, the superintendent and I, we had wanted to be able to pull the tech specialist out of the ESSER grant and bring them back onto the operating budget, but it's going to have to be funded from ESSER for next year.
Not this year.
And as you can see in FY23, there's $128,000 for instructional and technology needs, and that's the other part of the $175,000. So we project to fully spend this going out into FY24.
So 50K for the tech spending.
55 out of ESSER 2, and then another 128. There's other instructions. There's some software licensing in there as well. So, but the 175 is between the two. So I'll pause there because the next slide goes into my revolving funds. If there are any questions on, I hope this was helpful. I know people want to know how we've spent this money, and I hope that this gives a high enough accounting of how the money has been used
Well, I think it's
to date.
helpful because I think there's a misunderstanding that there's just like a huge bucket of money floating around that we can use for any old thing.
Well, there is a huge bucket of money, but it's
But we can't
for
use it
learning
for any old
loss.
thing. Right.
Yeah, it's for,
It's already slated
yeah.
for very specific purposes
And,
because
right, and, right. it's
The
only used
needs
for
have
certain
grown,
things,
right.
And it's gonna be empty.
Right.
I mean, we have to use it or lose it.
What did you think?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, sorry.
Same thing, it's going away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've done our best, and the superintendent and Dr. Bacon and Martha Raymond and I have talked extensively about this. We've tried not to load this up with positions that will have to come onto the operating budget. There are some, but at some point, the K-6 floating teachers, that's a pandemic need, that's not going to always be there. So that's 5 positions that aren't going to have to come onto they have to be here now, and this is an absolute appropriate use of the funding.
But like the director of social emotional learning, that's a long-term position.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to switch gears to revolving funds. We have a number of them. They are all set up by statute and regulations. They are established for a dedicated specific source of revenue from fees or charges, and they have a very dedicated what you can use them for. Mass General Law governs the fund balances and expenditures and any required reporting. And I know this, hopefully you guys can see this. It's so hard to put this much data on a screen, but I've segmented our revolving funds into 2 sets. The top are the 5 funds that we use to help support or offset expenses. So school rental, school athletics, our pre-K tuition, which is really from our lunch bunches and our peer role models, our extended day program before and after school, and the NAHUNT, the non-resident tuition. So all of those funds help either offset our budget or offset expenses. And so school rental, we use that primarily to cover some heating and utility costs because associated with a rental kind of thing. Athletics, you're aware that we have a fee-based program for our student athletes, and we charge, anywhere from the transportation and the officials to the revolving fund. The pre-K tuition, that helps offset a couple of staff members with that $65,000. Extended day, we know that sunsetted. We were very happy to bring that back this year with the award of the contract to the YMCA. And we're very confident that we will hit that 67,500 number this year for revenue, and we're comfortable with the 75,000 for next year as well. And then the Nahant tuition, that's the agreed to negotiated amount, and then the small amount that we have budgeted or planned for special education. So it's the combined dollar amount. And then the next group are really just the other revolving funds that we have that support kind of specific things. Our school lunch revolving fund, driver's education. There's a couple of drama revolving funds in there. There's a robotics gift account, the different school gift accounts, and guidance. So, yes.
I have a question about the school lunch.
Yes.
I was under the impression that that was being subsidized.
So I realize now, as I'm looking at it, that I didn't put any data in for FY22 because I didn't want to try and budget. I don't really budget at the level for the revolving funds. So the revolving fund, the school lunch for this year is free for everybody.
Yep.
And so as a result of that, all meals are considered reimbursable, meaning we're getting reimbursed by the federal government, the meal rate for breakfast and for lunch. And so it is running profitably this year because all meals are considered reimbursable.
Or not profitably, but just not.
It is going to run at a small profit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 'cause they sell all add-on stuff. Right?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the add-ons, cookies.
Cookies.
Yeah, there's the power of the cookie. There are a la carte, did I say it right? A la carte menu items that are available for sale. And then, Maureen Kellett, our food service director, is just a gift. I mean, she does a great job, and she watches every penny like it's her own, and really leverages what she can get for commodities from the USDA. Is it USDA? Yeah. And so she runs a profitable organization, profitable service for us. I'm going to skip forward. Sorry.
I think I'm just not reading this right. I just don't know if I'm reading this properly. So if we I'm looking at school athletics, for example.
Okay.
So if we go into FY23 and we read, so it's 275,000 expected revenue.
I made the revenues and the expenses balance. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm reading here.
Yeah.
So it's 275 coming in, 275 going out.
Yeah. I mean, based on, FY21 is actual data. So that's where, so when you see, it shouldn't say projected balance, it should say balance at FY21. I should have deleted the projected from the column heading there. That was the actual starting point for FY22. And then based on what we've taken in so far and where I think we're going to end up, I really focused on the 5 revolving funds that support operations to look at and say, well, where are they going to fit in?
Okay.
And where are they going to finish? So based on how much revenue we've taken in to date and what's still to come for the spring season, and where we are expenditure-wise, and the reason I've projected expenses to be higher is we went to the Super Bowl with our football team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there was extra buses. There were extra games that we didn't get extra fees. It was a one fee, but there, congratulations to them. They had a great season, and with that comes a little additional cost. So that's why the expenses for this year are trailing or are projected to be a little bit more. These slides really just talk about the different funds that are used to help support the budget, which I've already spoken about.
Can I just ask a quick question on the last slide? Why is the ECLC grant here not under grants? Like, why is it under revolving?
Because it's not a state grant, it's a private grant, so it went into a revolving fund. And we're spending that down, the last bit of that, with our DIEB work this year.
Thanks.
That's a good question. Talk a little bit, I think you all know, but for anyone who's watching at home, our preschool, we run a wonderful preschool out of the middle school. It services children from ages 3 to 5, and children have varying abilities, and they are educated alongside children who are typically developing. And so we have a fee component for our children that are typically developing, and that's a combination of lunch bunch and preschool tuition. And our fees, it varies depending upon the number of days a student is enrolled. Sorry, I'm really fast with this mouse today. It's very sensitive. Our before and after school, we did, school committee recognized and charged the superintendent and I with getting that program back up and running, and we did. We entered into an agreement with the YMCA, and our enrollment, at least in our after school program, is back to pre-pandemic levels. The before school enrollment really did decline, and the program wasn't sustainable at Clark and Stanley, based on the really low enrollment numbers. The agreement that we entered into with Y is up to 3 years, so years 2 and year 3 is at our discretion, and we anticipate it being renewed with the Y. So I'm going to pause there because the next part of my presentation is about FTEs, so I don't know if any other questions on revolving funds.
As it relates to the Y and having that as an agreement that is no longer managed in-house, is it beneficial?
Yes.
Is it? Can you talk about why?
Sure. I think I
can imagine the obvious, but I would like to.
Well, I think that in my limited experience in this role, I find it more beneficial to outsource things that are not fundamentally related to instruction and education. And so food services is outsourced. There are companies out there that do it much better, more economical than I could by trying to find those resources. It's staff that we don't have to manage. They manage the staff, they manage the payroll. I feel like they're our employees, but technically they're not, but they are part of our team. And so same thing, transportation is another one. Some districts pull that in-house, but I don't want to be figuring out where to park buses and how to, get the heating blocks going on the cold days and hiring bus drivers and everything else. That's something that's better outsourced, in my opinion. And so I think with the before and after school program, there are organizations out there. It was a very competitive bid. I think we had 4 or 5 respondents. So there are organizations out there that do it and do it well. And now it's someone else manages it and oversees it, and we get the revenue, revenue share.
I know that I know we have a lot of our teachers and aides work as, or used to work as employees for after school. Do we know if they still do?
I think some do. I know that some definitely do.
It's working for them.
I think that this pandemic has made people make a lot of different life decisions that are good for them, and some staff, I think, that are already in the building all day wearing a mask all day didn't want to have a longer day wearing a mask all day. I'm not really sure. I do know for certain that some people did stay on, and the Y was happy to recruit and retain those talented staff.
But it's working for the most part.
Yes.
Great. Good. That's good to hear.
Just want to talk a little bit.
It's nice to see a positive and without the headache.
Yeah. So full-time equivalents, or FTEs, which you'll hear me say quite a bit, the shorthand for them. I'm very happy that we implemented position control here in July of 2020. It really is a way to ensure that permanent positions are fully funded, tracked, salary expenditures are tracked, funding sources are tracked, and it helps you understand the total cost of your salary per employee. It's a really helpful tool when it comes to forecasting and planning. I know that my peers and the superintendent, like I have pivot tables of position numbers and staff and all FTEs, so it's a good way to help manage everything. And we continue to look for opportunities to create efficiencies when it comes to supporting student learning. And so, oops, sorry, I'm really fast here today. So overall, our FTE count, oh geez, I did not update the wording on this slide. I'm very sorry. That's an oversight. Let me go back to, so ignore the verbiage on this slide. Okay. This is my FY 21 to 22, and I apologize to the committee that I missed this in updating it. The actual slide is correct. The data table is correct. I did not update my, my wording, so I apologize for that. Our actual FTE count is going up by 6.5 FTEs year over year. This is by funding source. So I started with operating budget. You can see the operating budget is actually reducing FTEs by 4.19 FTE. Extended day trailed off as the program sunsetted. The IDEA grant, that's where you see that large shift when you look at FY21 to FY22. That was the year that we determined the better use of our IDEA grant funds was to use it to pay for out-of-district tuitions. When you're using federal funds to pay staff, there's a time and effort reporting that has to be done. And when you have staff that potentially turn over or take leaves of absence, it just becomes really, really choppy. And on a grant of that size, it's a lot easier to manage by taking 5 or 6 out-of-district placements and just charging them there for the year, and you spent it down in a year versus trying to manage 20 staff that you're charging to it. So that was the year that we made that change. So that's why you see the FY21 operating budget FTEs going from 340 to 361. It was that shift of, we didn't go up by 20 employees, we just changed funding sources. The other funding sources have stayed pretty consistent with our METCO program, our Title I, and then tuition. The tuition line there is really our pre-K tuition. So it's changed a bit year over year. And then you can see the ESSER grants down at the bottom, ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, and the funding of positions for those 2 grants. So overall, our FTE count from FY22 budget to FY23 budget is going up by 6.5, but you can see really the bulk of it, 8.7, almost 9 positions of it are from ESSER 2 to ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funded. And of those, we've talked, there are about 3 or 4 of those positions that will come back to the operating budget. Looking at this one, this presents the same data, but by bargaining group. So our teachers obviously are our largest unit. You can see year over year, the change is a 7.2 FTE change. ESPs, there's a decrease of 4.5. Part of that is a function of attrition, and part of it is thinking strategically about where we want to have support for students going forward. Tutors has changed, not significantly. Administrative assistant, that was the difference between trying to make it work for supporting the facilities director with using an existing resource versus saying, no, he needs a dedicated 1.0, not a 0.5. So went back to the town with that one. It's a shared position. The town is picking up the other 0.5 of that 1.0. And then the non-union custodial, a few changes there.
What's contracted, EE?
Contracted employees.
Oh, EE, okay. EE
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Contracted employees increased, the increase there is part of the occupational health nurse, tech support.
Oh, okay.
Content coach. All right. I wanted to talk a bit about the change, the drill deeper on the change in the SEA. So the overall increase is 7.2%. But this year, we had an increase for the general education by 1.5, special education by 2.0, for next year, the FY '22 to '23. And then there are budget reductions for general education of 7 positions. And I'll pause here and allow the superintendent to talk about it as well. But we're aware of that, enrollment has declined at both the middle school and high school, and some difficult conversations need to be had. I'm going to pause and let the superintendent jump in for a minute.
Yeah, I would just echo that part of our conversation with the town administrator on Friday was the fact that our enrollment has declined. And if you look at middle school and high school enrollment for the last 5 years, I think it's about 5 years, they were in the 700s. They're in the mid 600s now. We can't keep doing what we're doing the way we're doing it just because. And so, it's important for the community to know that we do look at our budget line by line. We do talk about enrollment, student enrollment. We do talk about class sizes. And what we found at the high school in particular is that we have class sizes at the high school on average of 15 and 16 students. That's a complete contradiction to what I've always said is our district philosophy, and that's smaller class sizes at the elementary school. And so we're really analyzing that high school enrollment, particularly by classes, and we've been working with both Mr. Kohut and Mr. Kalishman to make them part of the conversation of how we reduce. And I've had the same conversation with the union leadership as well, that it's completely contradictory to my philosophy to look at class sizes of 12, of 10, but when you average them out, of 15 at the high school. So as Ms. Seibert said, we've been having some difficult conversations for a couple of months. We've been asking them to be part of the conversation and part of the work. And so we have baked that into this budget that we present to you tonight. And there's still more difficult conversations to be had. But I just think it's important for the community and for the committee to know that we've been digging that deeply with the high school and middle school principals.
I know I've said this privately with you, but it bears saying it publicly as well. But, I think about when we had to cut Mandarin a few years ago because there was, I think, 10 or 12 kids and we just couldn't support it. And at the time, we talked about having that be an online class. And at the time, that was pretty shocking. But knowing what we know now, while we're not looking to recreate with the last couple of years, and I'm certainly not advocating for a land of online learning. I do think that we have to think about where we can be successful and where we do have niche offerings that perhaps we do look at it creatively and figure out where it can be either with a North Shore community or with an online offering.
But I assure you, these aren't niche areas. These are core academic areas where there's 8 of one class running, and the average class size is in the mid-teens.
So like 8 Algebra 1 classes, for example.
Correct.
Okay.
Why are there 8 running when there could be less? So those are the kinds of, I think part of, because of the pandemic, I don't think we've had these difficult conversations with administrators for the last 2 years at least. So this is a new territory for them. And I will say, understanding the budget at a level that I do now as an elementary principal, I didn't. And so it's an opportunity, as much as Ms. Seibert has educated me in the way, the cost centers and the way we do the budget, we're trying to educate the principals because they're about the students 100% of the time. And this is an area they're not familiar with. So we've been working really closely with them, and we'll continue to work with them. But I think it's important to understand that there is some pain in presenting you with this recommended budget tonight. And so, and a lot of work and a lot of hours and a lot of conversations have happened and will continue to happen.
Any questions, comments?
Sorry, I guess I do. I appreciate how hard this is, but I think it's really important. I think this work came out of changing the schedule at the high school too, right? Like so that scheduling kids to be in fewer algebra classes, for example, is more possible. And sharing resources with the middle school if needed, back and forth, because we've aligned the schedules, right? I mean,
All connected.
I think so. That certainly is a goal, is to be able to share resources.
Right.
I think that was another part of, and the superintendent said it, we hadn't had these difficult conversations because we were in a pandemic. This was the first year of trying to change a schedule and understand, what that looks like and what that means. And this was the opportune time to now start that next layer of conversations, which is we don't need 8 sections of world civilization, or Algebra 1 or whatever the case may be. We can try and manage it with fewer sections.
Yeah, and in high school, it really is, I mean, there's benefits to smaller classes, but there's also benefits to larger classes because you're going, it's a transition, right, to the next, secondary,
college,
and
Right.
and it's just, it makes much more sense at this level than it does at, elementary school level. So,
I may have a question as well. I'm not questioning the number. Can you break out what middle school versus high school for the 7?
I don't think we're prepared to do that at this time because the conversations are still occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, though. Thank you, Mr. Baxter.
Not a problem.
So next steps are for the school committee to vote the budget tonight. Any more questions? And then it becomes your budget, which goes to, again, the town administrator. But I'm going to go right into, I'll pause to see if there are any other questions before we go into the updated budget.
No, this is really thorough.
Yeah.
I understand this. I mean, being on this committee for multiple years has been great, because now I really feel like I can follow it and understand what you're saying, and I so appreciate, having it broken down over 3 nights has been great.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. I know it's a big time commitment, but I do appreciate it.
No, it's really one of the most important things we do.
Yeah, and it's so much more digestible this way.
Yeah.
I am happy to say that sorry, yes.
No, just before you go, I want to dovetail that as well. Again, someone who's, this is my second go-around, the difference is it's not even night and day, it's beyond. Is that we would literally spend, back in the day, an hour.
Really?
You'd have your,
It was a one-pager.
there's a 1-page, this is what we did, yay or nay, and call it a day.
Wow.
So this level of work and effort by the district, it's made for someone who's new, it's amazing. It's amazing how easy to understand it actually is.
See, because then when we came in, it was hours, but line by line,
Yeah.
but it almost didn't.
Yeah, we
You know,
did.
like-
Couldn't make heads or
Like you
tail
could
of
sit
it.
there and talk about the price of a copy machine forever, but
Right.
that's not what meant, like,
Right.
Yeah, we'd be sitting here for an hour. That was it.
Yeah.
Done.
wow,
Done.
wow.
Yeah. So this is great, really. I know I can't even imagine the amount of work, but it's really laid out that, it's easy to understand. So it's good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I appreciate that feedback, and it's nice to know that it is digestible and understandable, because the goal is to be transparent and for people to understand how we're spending their tax money. So it is very important to me as well. I just want to say, we did get back to the practice of 2.88% growth. We still have staffing challenges. We are still trying to manage the school building project and class sizes K through 12. The budget assumptions are the same. A fair and reasonable COLA is in there for our teacher contract, which we're currently in negotiations for. Just to recap, we do have 86 staff that are eligible for steps. We have 33 staff that are eligible for lane changes or have identified that they feel they're going to have the credits available to change lanes next year. We talked about it earlier, but we did increase our use of circuit breaker by $350,000 over the estimated award for next year. So that is still consistent. We didn't go deeper into that. We did slightly increase our revolving fund offset from $67,500 in this year's budget to $75,000 in next year's. There are savings associated with the reallocation of resources, and that's the 7 resources that we talked about tonight. And we do anticipate an increase in special education costs as out-of-district placements continue to escalate in cost. So going back to the town appropriation, we did go back to the basis that was requested, to go back to what the FY22 appropriation was, which was $29,376,863. That's what the town appropriated to the school department for this fiscal year. We also have the Nahant tuition, both from the agreement, the $1.5 million, and an estimated special education tuition revenue of $150,000. And just as a reminder for the committee, that $150,000 are tuitioned-in students that are attending our in-district programs, K through 6, or pre-K through 6. So the FY23 budget, building off of FY22, 2.88% increase is an additional support from the town of $846,000. We know what our Nahant tuition agreement has for FY23. That's been negotiated. We do estimate that $85,000 for special education tuition. There may be some upside in that, if another student ends up coming here, but $85,000 is a conservative number. So our overall operating budget for FY23, our recommendation, superintendent, is $31,915,053, which is a $820,000 increase or a 2.6% increase. And I wanted to kind of highlight for the committee what the changes were from what was presented earlier. So back on January 26th, when we initially presented the budget, the initial recommended budget was $32,201,443. We shifted technology of $175,000 to ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. We eliminated the communications position, the 0.5 FTE that we had discussed way back in November when we had our forum with the committee. And then as a result of those conversations, the ongoing conversations with leadership, we increased the projected savings from some of those positions that we're looking to reduce in FY23. So that's how we arrive at that $31,915,051. And I'll pause here. I think the superintendent and I are very comfortable with this recommended budget, but I want to pause for a moment and let her speak as well.
My only question, as my financial mentor, is I see 31,915.53 in the top table.
Oh no,
and
I'm off by $2. It's $2. It's rounding.
Well, just want to be, someone has taught me well.
I know. I'm.
Someone will call us out on that $2, right?
No, I have to share, and I'll share with the committee. I'm mortified because earlier in this presentation, and Mr. Pastor, you were so kind. The heavy lifting of this budget development happened way back when we put this cost center into play. And so every year now, I pull out my slides from the prior year and I update the tables, and I omitted updating some of the text this year, and I'm mortified that I did that. And so I can't believe that I didn't catch the $2 rounding, because normally I would, but I think I'm tired at this point. So
I'm impressed, Superintendent.
I would just say that, it's 3 nights of school committee, but it's months
Oh, yeah.
of meetings and conversations. And I am more than comfortable presenting this budget and turning it over to become the school committee's budget tonight. The work that we did between Friday's meeting and tonight's meeting was detailed, digging deeper, again, many conversations, many meetings. So I'm very, very comfortable presenting this budget to you and turning it over to become the school committee's budget.
And then I guess it is 51, so rounded down, I apologize, I lost you guys $2. This was just to show you the difference between what happened with the cost centers. So you can see that $37,500 was in the administrative cost center, and that's been reduced. And the rest of it, the $175,000 and the $73,892 of additional savings, that was all in the general education line. So the restated budget by cost center is at the top of this slide here, $31,915,051. And I did provide a cheat sheet to the chair, and I believe it reflects that $39,915,051.
It does. It has the $2.
And if you want to add $2 back to it, by all means.
No,
Not my $2.
No, it has the $2.
It has the $2 on it?
It
Okay,
has
so
the
there you go.
51. Yeah, it's
Perfect. Oops, sorry. So for there, I will stop sharing and turn it back over to the committee for any final questions prior to a vote.
So you're gonna present this budget to the FinCom?
Yes, when we're invited, I believe the chair and the committee will also be invited to that meeting sometime in March.
And because it's 2.6%, it's pretty great.
Well,
I mean,
So we're not anticipating any issues because.
Well, I anticipate issues because
Yeah,
I think we should put the 180 back in. There's still another 37,000 and there's still another 70,000 of savings.
Right.
If we put the 180 in, what percentage are we at?
Well, we'd be back to where we were. We put the 180 back in.
I think that's vital.
When you say back to where we were, you mean 2.88?
We'd be back up to the 32 million.
so
But you're-
$180,000 makes it,
I was asking percentage-wise.
It would put it, overall increase, it would put it closer to 3.1 or 3.2, I think, wouldn't it? You go back to what
It
it
would
was.
be 3.2, I believe.
Yeah,
I
go
just
back
like,
to,
I think, I'm
But that's what's.
trying to be really polite about this, but I'm really irritated to not have the information about where we are, where the town is, about receipts, and about the cutting of that money, and about where we are, where we actually are.
And I don't like the idea that that's us asking for 3 point whatever percent, because it's not.
Right.
We're still asking for 2.6%. The 180 is ours. It should have been there the whole time.
Can I ask that we send a formal letter, formalize this to the administrator, asking, that's all you can do is ask.
So you guys don't want to vote on this tonight because.
Well, I mean, we can change the
Yeah, I think we
number.
should vote. I think we should.
I think we should vote. I think we need to decide whether we're voting on this number or whether we're going to add in the 180 and go back to the other number.
I'd like to add the 180 back in.
So would I.
Everything I've heard you guys talk about is that is what was discussed. And I think we should take them at their word, with the word they gave everybody. We add that 180 back in.
That makes sense, until we see anything that would cause us not to want to put it back.
Correct, correct, John, correct.
I mean, it's then their prerogative to reduce it, but at least we have been honest with what we feel we need and what the deal was.
I would agree.
I mean, if that 180 goes back in, Mrs. Seibert, is that sort of like putting the technology back in our operating budget?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where I would see it very specifically going.
Right. Ms. Seibert, can you just do a quick arithmetic adding that one in?
That's what I was gonna say, 'cause I can't make a motion.
I've been trying, I just can't. Can you just do a quick arithmetic for me?
Sure.
Would that be under the administration line item?
No, it would be.
Or under the district-wide programs?
General ed.
No, in general ed.
General ed.
General ed was technology.
So I'm just, want to be clear what you're asking me to do. I'm trying to open up my budget file, so give me 1 moment.
We just want to add 180,000 to the 31,991, whatever.
It's just gonna have to change the general ed.
Yeah, you have to, right, you're gonna add it to the general ed, right? The 180 to the general ed.
Yeah. And decrease the.
Okay, hold on. I think I got this.
How much was technology? 75,000?
It was 175,000.
Oh,
So
what a convenient number.
Give them a $5,000.
Yeah.
you would like me to add back. It's a massive spreadsheet. Bear with me 1 second.
So $16,274,714 plus 180. Make that $16,454,714. So that would make the general ed line item 16,454,714.
Correct. That would give the total budget would then become 32,095.
Hang on a second, I can give it to you.
Okay, what did it on it?
Wait,
So general ed is now 16,454,714.
yep,
And the grand total, the overall budget is 32,095,051. And that is an increase of 3.2%.
But not really.
but
Right,
not
but
really.
not really.
What's the percent?
Well, it's an increase of 3.2% over the,
Over
Over what
Over
the town gave us.
the reduced,
not what
over
we
the
yes.
reduced
spent.
budget,
Yes.
but not over what our budget was.
Right.
Correct.
If you restate it correct.
And especially if, as we talked about 2 years ago, when we agreed to start rethinking how we manage capital improvements and technology spending, and working that into our budgets, and understanding that there was going to have to be a natural growth that's not really if you think about it, like a terrific growth, because this is only what was there to start with.
Right.
Right. That's why the.
Yeah, it equates to a 2.6% increase.
Because if we start $180,000 down, that's actually $180,000 down last year,
Right.
and $180,000 down this year.
Right. So I mean, we should be asking for double, but we're just asking for 180.
Yeah.
You go.
You have to make that argument, can't you?
I know.
Yeah.
We'll ask for that next year.
Okay, for the technology line item. Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to vote on the administrative cost center for $1,302,696. Could I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Could I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to do, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion is unanimous. The administration line item is $1,302,696. I'm going to entertain a motion to approve our general education cost center line item in the amount of $16,454,714, which is $180,000 more than what the superintendent's budget recommends.
Correct.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is unanimous. Can I have a motion to approve the Special Education Cost Center at $10,096,164?
I'll make the motion.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Can I have a motion to approve the School Facilities Cost Center at $2,510,137?
I'll make the motion.
Can I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved. Can I have a motion to approve the cost center for district-wide programs at $1,731,340?
Make the motion.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. And for the fiscal year '23 school budget, could I have a motion to approve our budget at $32,095,051?
I'll make the motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved. The fiscal year 2023 school budget at $32,095,051. 32,095,051.
Yes.
Thank
You did
you.
a great job reading those numbers.
Congratulations,
I know, it's
you have
harder
a
than
budget.
it seems like it's
Like you had fourth grade.
So I will update the budget book to be the school committee's recommended budget. It will include some of those tables that we talked about. It'll include the 10-year capital plan, or 10-year technology plan, rather. We'll get that published hopefully by the end of the week, if not early next week.
Well, I have to say, that is the first time in my history that we have approved a budget that is not in line with the recommendation of the superintendent and the business manager. Extraordinary circumstances, I understand. I want to note that it is unanimous across the school committee. And while I know that you have had, I really want to acknowledge that you guys have had some very difficult conversations and appreciate that the hard work that went into doing what you did to get to a number that that Sean Fitzgerald asked you to get to. But we've, I think when you, and you, I think probably the two of you could speak to this more so than anyone, since the training is freshest. When you join school committee, the first thing that you learn is that while we are elected by our constituents who are other town members, our responsibilities are to the kids. And yes, it absolutely makes sense to be working with the town because we are town members, we're town taxpayers. But first and foremost, in our jobs as school committee members, is our role to make sure that what we're doing for our students is first and foremost. And I know that I, for one, don't appreciate the idea that anytime we are out of step with town hall, that there has been the threat that I am somehow threatening a good working relationship. I don't believe that disagreement is a threat to good relationships. But I think, you know, as I started in my conversation, that the two of you could probably speak to more than anything, that our job is first and foremost to the school district, and I think that's what happened here tonight. So if anybody wants to say anything.
I mean, for the 9 years that we've been here, there has been a stress on building and maintaining those relationships and working collaboratively, and I believe that we have done that. We have done that and more. In this particular case, you know, we're just doing what is right and what is just for our budget, which is for the kids. So it has nothing to do with, you know, those relationships. Those should be able to remain strong and collaborative going forward.
Well, to Amy's point, just disagreement doesn't
Right.
negate a, you know, null a relationship, so hopefully, yeah. I mean,
So thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Ms. Seibert, for all the work that you guys put into doing this, and thank you to all your staff, because I know it's been difficult conversations. Okay. Anything else before we move on?
Nope. Great job, everybody.
Okay, so we are going to, let's move into committee announcements. If you want to start us out, Glenn? Do you have anything?
No, I'm all set, thank you.
I'm all set.
yeah.
I am as well. And
We're gone.
what was that?
Our students
The
are
kids
gone.
went,
Kids
Oh,
went to bed.
they leave at
Went to
9,
do
they
their
got homework, yeah.
good for them.
Good for
And I'm going to move public comment up. I don't know if there is anybody who is interested in public comment. If there is, let me go over to Zoom and see. There is, raise your hand.
Going. Yeah, I don't see any hands going up.
Okay. I don't either. Okay. Then I'm going to go to, I gave you guys my chair update. It really had everything to do with the meeting that we had last week. I have nothing in addition to that. So I will turn it over to the subcommittee section of this and our policy group.
Well, just a quick update with the school building committee. You're scheduled for a meeting next Tuesday that may be postponed. We just got some estimates in from different some different cost estimators for the design as it is right now. So they're reconciling them and starting to talk about VE, so or value engineering to get the price in. And so that work is still happening, so it's not really ready to present to the committee who has to vote on it. So chances of it being pushed back to March 1st are pretty great right now. So just so you know, some work is going to supposedly happen on Stanley School grounds, drilling the well. It's been pushed back a little bit, but it's either going to happen in the middle of the month now or in the beginning of March. So that's exciting. They're going to drill the first well, and it'll become one of the wells in the whole well field. Yeah, and the contractor has, or the engineers that are designing it have volunteered to be at the school and answer questions with kids or have teachers like understand what's happening there.
Yeah.
So hopefully someone takes advantage of that, because it's really exciting for the kids to have some ownership or be part of the project.
Big trucks.
Yeah, you know what? It's only going to be one digging truck. There's hardly anything going to be there, but it's just like,
what are you doing?
Cool
It's
stuff,
kinda cool.
right?
Well,
Digging a hole in the ground. What could be
It's
better for an
interesting
elementary kid than
to
digging a hole
see
in the
why
ground?
you're digging the hole, though, too.
So if I could add my 2 cents, on TikTok, there is a really fabulous contributor who is the sanitation commissioner of New York City,
Oh, I've seen that. It's awesome.
who gives us periodic updates about snow melting and garbage pickup and the purely mundane, and it is fantastic.
That's funny.
And I think I would encourage the school building committee to take a peek at it and
That's
Maybe
funny.
you can do something.
and maybe come up with
Maybe
some
TikTok
kind
in
of,
it. There you
some
go.
kind of
You get
similar,
stars in
because
there.
they're really terrific.
I'm pretty sure I can't even download the app.
I think it makes people feel really good about like where their money's
That's funny.
going.
Yeah, I mean, we hope to be able to videotape the whole build, or time lapse it or something. It'd be really fun to do that, and it'd be fun to, interview different trades, what they're doing in the building and stuff. It'd be very cool. So, yeah.
I've shared it with Gino Cresta and asked him to
Right.
contribute similar things. I think it could.
Yeah, no, there's so much opportunity, it's a shame that, it's just no time in the day,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
working on it.
Yeah.
And for the other policy, the INJDD that we had the first read last time, it's still with council.
Okay.
So he thought he would get it done by the end of this week, so Maureen said she'd put it on the next agenda,
Okay.
so we can skip that. So that's all I have.
Amy, just one other, can I add?
Yeah.
The negotiating subcommittee is meeting with the ESP union on Friday morning.
Awesome. Okay. With that then, I'm going to move into the consent agenda, which is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee can adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any items can be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. Tonight, we have 2 regular session minutes from January 26th and February 2nd. We have executive session minutes from February 3rd, and we have warrant number 2232. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All right, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. And unless anybody has anything else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second?
It is 9:47. Oh, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
It is 9:47, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.